Hello, everybody. It's me, Adam Ginsberg. I'm with David Somore, and we're here with another installation of Third World Airports. Today, we're going to be talking about Neil Gorsuch and the hearings today, and the fact that he's been put up to be the new Supreme Court nominee by Donald Trump. So, Dave, you want to get right into it?
Yeah, let's start. So he's had 2 days of his hearing so far, and before we get into that, I think we should just look at his record and analyze him as a judge and his background. So to start off with him, he has a education in he has an education in he went to law, Harvard Law with Barack Obama. They were actually classmates. He went to Oxford as well for graduate school. And there was one more school he went to, but that shows that he's a pretty well-educated guy.
Columbia, Harvard, and Oxford.
Okay. Columbia, Harvard, and Oxford. So those are three, very rigorous schools, very well-known schools. So we start off with that. And he's known to be what they call a constitutional originalist, which is justice, and they say he's Justice Scalia-esque. And what do I mean by that? Well, Justice Scalia was known to be a conservative. He was known to have an interpretation of the law that didn't allow much breathing room from it in most instances, and that's where he differed from other judges in the Supreme Court. Anyway, Adam, do you have anything else that you think of him from his background? Well, anything else to add on to that?
He's been a district judge, circuit judge since 2006.
Mm-hmm.
He's worked in private practice in D.C., and he's worked as many law students come out of college. He initially worked clerking, I believe. So that's that. Look, he's very qualified. That's definitely something. He was a former clerk to Byron White and Anthony Kennedy, both former Supreme Court. Byron White was a former justice, and Anthony Kennedy is still a Supreme Court justice today.
And so, based on that, you would think, he's qualified, and there should be little to no problem with approving him. However, there's still backlash. There's still, questions of how he interprets certain things, and under the Trump administration, what will he do, and in the future. And also, there's a big issue with the Democrats on, the Republicans just straight out being obstructionist against their justice appointee under the Obama administration. The second one,
Eric
Garland. And to be honest with you, it just seemed like they didn't want to hear a word from what he had to say, and not even a hearing.
They didn't. It's true. Mitch McConnell did not allow hearings on the floor for Garland. So yes, they said, look, even though it was in February when Scalia did pass, they did not even have any debate whatsoever on the fact that Garland was appointed by Obama. But now I want to make a point here, because
all right,
in the last couple of days and in his previous comments, Gorsuch has been questioned by Congress, and he has been questioned pretty hard by Democrats about would he be independent as a judge. And based on his comments so far, he has, I believe, passed muster. And I hope he's not just saying this just to say it, but he said, no man is above the law. That's his quote. He said he would have walked out the door if Trump had talked about Roe v. Wade in his interview. He called Merrick Garland an outstanding judge, but when asked what he thought about the whole situation, he said he cannot get involved in politics. And there is a controversial case, which I do not agree with this ruling, about a trucker who got, this is one of the cases that's you would call a thorn in the side of Gorsuch at this point, a trucker who was ordered by his truck company to stay with his truck in sub-zero weather, but he said, look, my hands are freezing, my body's freezing, and so he went to get help for himself, and he left the trailer, and he lost his job. And what Gorsuch did, which I thought was pretty cold and heartless, and his opinion was that the man was right to be fired because he broke the law.
All right.
No, this is interesting because, wait, I'm not done here. Gorsuch said that even if it was a bad law, he's not in the business of legislating. He's just in the business of interpreting the law. And he had to apply the law as written by Congress. And so I just find that interesting because it's not. He said he also said it was a decision that he takes home at night. It's one that he takes home at night. So it's not something that he took lightly. Definitely not. And while I definitely don't agree that you can be a strict originalist or an originalist at this point in time, considering how far the Constitution has been extrapolated, and also that we want it to be a living document. We don't want our country to be a dead country, just like we don't want it to be a dead document. But I think that he's strong in his convictions and won't be necessarily servile to Donald Trump, which I think is really all you can ask for in a Republican-controlled
Yeah.
Republican-controlled House.
And in regard to the comment where he, it was Senator Al Franken who lambasted him and said, "It is absurd to say this company is in its right to fire him because he made the choice of possibly dying from freezing to death or causing other people to die, possibly by driving an unsafe vehicle." And then his remark after that was, "That's absurd. Now, I had a career in identifying absurdity, and I know it when I see it, and it makes me question your judgment." Now, here's the thing. When you are a justice, your job, these people are the best of the best, and I've heard interviews, and as a justice, you're supposed to put your political convictions aside, your your emotional convictions aside, and interpret the law for what it is. And he said that that's how he interpreted the law, and that's how he went to sleep at night with the decision and regretting it. I mean, who wants to fire somebody for such a terrible condition? And that's where it comes into play that Al Franken is a senator for a reason, and he's not a judge, and you and I aren't judges either, because that takes a high level of skill to put aside your convictions and just try to interpret the law for what it is.
Now, don't get me wrong here. Look, you and I were both teenagers. We're both in high school. We haven't gone through college education, so it's not like we necessarily are and are overly educated on this topic. And it's possible that our views may evolve over the years as we learn more. But I will say that if I were in Gorsuch's position, that I would have erred on the side of humanity rather than the side of the law. But I can definitely see where he's coming from there. However, the fact that he did take an originalist view in this case and not one in this situation that was, I think, pretty clear. And yes, it was absurd considering that the only way the trucker could have kept his job is by freezing to death with this trailer in sub-zero temperatures. That he made a decision that was wrong. However, the fact that he's remorseful over it, and the fact that he did think deeply about it,
Mm-hmm.
I think bodes well for his future. And I just want to say that it is the job of Al Franken and the job of Democrats to ask hard questions of this nominee. They're not supposed to give him softballs.
No, I agree.
That would be ridiculous. We have to vet this guy thoroughly. Also considering how Trump has made the Supreme Court one of his, I guess, calling cards throughout the whole campaign that really got Republicans to vote for him, and people who would normally have qualms over Trump's unethical behavior throughout the whole campaign voted for him because he was promising to nominate a conservative nominee for the Supreme Court. So it is definitely right to question Gorsuch over his decisions and wonder whether he will be a lapdog to Trump, which I believe, based on his comments, although he could be, lying, although I don't think he is, I think based on his comments, it's reasonable to believe that Gorsuch would be an independent judge. Now, do I believe that the way he judges is the way I would want a judge to judge? No, but I gotta respect his individuality on this.
Of course, and I agree with you there, and I see, it's a tough job, and I think that he should be questioned thoroughly. And it's just the comment how Al Franken says, "Oh, that's absurd. I know absurdity when I see it. It makes you question your judgment." It seems like he's really going out of his way there, and it's a little bit far fetched to say that he can't be qualified for that, even though that's not what he's saying.
But this is not about Al Franken.
No, of
This is
course,
not
no.
about Gorsuch.
And
And it's
moving
also
on to other things that are supposedly controversial about him, he's opened up on his remarks on the Hobby Lobby case and defending the Catholic nonprofit organizations that are against contraceptives. And that's a big deal, and that's very controversial. And I have a specific view when it comes to Hobby Lobby and these Catholic profit organizations, but I look deeper, and I appreciate his consistency on religious freedom, that it's not only the Christian faith, but there's an example that there was someone in a Native American tribe who murdered his daughter, and he wanted to use an existing sweat lodge in the prison facility as part of his religious tradition. And he wrote and he allowed it under federal law because he said the inmate deserved the right, and that struck down the state's discretionary correctional policy. But for the sake of religion and worship, he voted for that. So it shows where he's very strong on religious freedom in that aspect. So that's one thing that's controversial about him in the social circles in this country. Now, what are your views on that?
Look, I think my views on you mean on his religious freedom? I
On
look,
his consist, yeah, on his
you can't fault his consistency, although you can fault his interpretation of whether a company can determine whether or not its total religious philosophy and whether that trickles down to its employees. And what I mean is, in the Hobby Lobby case, you can definitely disagree with the fact that, does the head of the company determine the religious philosophy of the entire company, or is a publicly traded company allowed to, or allowed to determine its own religious faith, while even if its employees disagree? So I think, and there's that definitely, and there are concerns that he has been excessively pro-business, and I know that he's provided examples in his testimony that he's not. But when you look at just the fact, either the Hobby Lobby ruling and this one with the trucker, you can look to see. I mean, you can question whether or not he will make decisions that will be good for the person, or for the people of this country, rather than just the businesses. But at the same time, you can say, well, maybe the laws in place that he's interpreting are more pro-business, and he's just going along with those. And I think that's more the case, honestly. But then
Mhm.
again, the fact that he is an originalist, and that's also. I mean, look, I'm sitting here as someone who leans left and looking at his history of cases and saying, I respect his consistency, but I don't agree with them. But at the same time, you're not going to get a liberal nominee, and you're not going to get a Merrick Garland nominated because Democrats have no control whatsoever.
Mhm.
So if Gorsuch, who's a rather down to earth person, and look, if you're gonna get him, he's very thoughtful, and while he might be Scalia like, you're not you. You can fight him, but you also got to choose your spots.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely
So
some.
is this a battle worth fighting for the Democrats, in your opinion?
I think it's a battle worth pursuing, but just to prove the point about the whole Merrick Garland fiasco. But at the same,
So
but look, you don't have to. Republicans have a minority; they can push him through. And but you also don't have to make it into this huge issue that eats up all this political capital. Because if one of the Democratic nominees retires from the court, or God forbid passes, I don't want. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to pass from the
okay.
court.
And
Then
can I ask you a question on your comment there? Um, Now you said, you think it's a battle worth pursuing because of what happened with Merrick Garland.
well, you got to prove a point. But at the
No,
same
but
time,
now here's what I want to say to that. Wait, I agree. I think that the way Merrick Garland was handled is it's undemocratic and it's not thoughtful at all by the Republicans, because there was very little basis for not giving him a hearing, other than it's Obama's appointee, so we're not even going to give him a hearing. The guy wasn't even that liberal. And but my question is it justifiable for the Democratic Party now to do the same thing? For the sake of democracy, I don't know if it is. And to be fair, Obama was able to appoint Sotomayor in the beginning of his presidency and then had the opportunity to appoint another one. And shouldn't Trump be able to appoint one for himself as well?
all right. So here's what I know what you're saying. You're saying, am I being hypocritical in this sense by
I don't know if
saying,
you're being hypocritical, but just your
no?
view on that. I don't know.
All right. the difference that I'm making here is that Republicans said we're not going to nominate someone until the election, and Democrats said that's wrong. It's Obama's presidency. And what I'm saying is, look, there's a huge swath of this country that voted Democratic. More people voted Democratic than voted Republican in the last election. So for the Republicans, I mean, for the Democrats not to do their due diligence in asking questions and also proving the point, I'm not saying
No, I think that's
they
fine. I just
delay.
think if they
I'm not
take
saying
the obstructionist route,
I'm not
are
saying
you
they
okay
delay
with that?
indefinitely. I'm not saying they delay indefinitely, but if you delay for a couple months, drag this out, really suss out what Gorsuch is, and prove the point that we're that Democrats are not going to lay down for Republicans, and also that they will compromise on Gorsuch, but they're also going to show that they're not not going to go down without a fight.
But why does the questioning would have to go on for 3 months? I mean, he brought
I mean
up
that's
something. Wait. He brought up something in his hearing today, and the questioner was like, "Do you regret this at all?" And he's like, "Yeah." It was sarcasm in the sense. He's like, "Yeah, I regret this because wait, who was the attorney he worked or the judge he worked for? You brought him up earlier.
White or Kennedy.
White, I think. He said anyway in 1973 when there was an appointee, he sat in his hearing for an hour, was smoking a cigarette, answering questions, and just like that, it was done. Now, is that a stretch for him? I guess, but I don't think it should go on for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. We see that he's perfectly qualified to be a Supreme Court justice, and isn't a week or two enough? Going on 3 months just kind of seems a little bit obstructionist, in my opinion.
Well, you know what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is I'm thinking no Democrats are going to vote for Gorsuch whatsoever. But what I'm saying, I even think it would be a gesture of reconciliation if, and I know that a lot of Democrats and left leaning people wouldn't agree with me, that you obstruct him for a little bit to make a point. And I know 3 months was arbitrary. I
Yes.
don't know exactly how long. And then after this period where you suss him out and you make the point to Republicans that we can play this game too, then you vote for him, or some vote for him as a symbol of reconciliation. But you can't just say next week we're going to confirm him.
No. I just don't think.
I think the way this year is gone, that would just honestly that'd be soft. You can't just play softball with this issue.
I just don't know if this is the position that we should have a big. I know it's a Supreme Court justice, but this position is made out to be more political than it actually is. Because, for example,
Trump made it out to
President
be
George W.
political.
Bush appointed Chief Justice Roberts. He was known to have very conservative political views, and now many conservatives hate him. Why? Because the way he interprets the Constitution contradicts conservative views at times. For example, he was the deciding vote for Obamacare, and Anton Scalia was roasting him and was upset at him, saying that this isn't Obamacare, this is SCOTUS care, because the Supreme Court is referring to Roberts, that this guy is the one that made this law possible. This position is not made out to be that political. I think it's a shame that because it's under the Trump administration, Gorsuch automatically is going to be demonized. But based
No,
on
I don't
you
think
think
I
he's
don't think he's.
qualified, I think he's qualified, and I don't think it should go on for more than the time that's necessary. And to be obstructionist and make this go on for months, potentially a year or 2 years, just
No,
seems out of line.
not for a year. You got to fill the seat, but at the same time, you don't have to just acquiesce to what the Republicans have been doing.
No, I'm
Yes,
not saying that. I mean,
and,
based on
and
the
it's
questions we saw today, some of them were extremely tough.
well. Do you want to know? First of all, that's the right of the Democrats to
No,
ask.
I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm saying they're already being tough, which is a good thing. But
Do you
does it
want
need to go on for a very long time
to
or just the time necessary?
you want to hear a question that he was asked by a Republican?
Sure.
Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? Now, come on. I understand it was meant as a joke, but this is this hearing is taking place. This is supposed to be a very serious issue.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Who
I know
was that, by the way? Because I don't I don't condone that. Do you know what senator that was?
I can look that up right now.
All right. Because I think that's absurd too, and that's why it's great that we live in a democracy with an opposition party, because this is the time when the opposition party needs to stand up and give heavy questions. But I just don't think this is a battle worth fighting to obstruct and make this go on a very long time.
Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, by the way. And
Okay.
also, I want to make this point because
Okay.
there's two schools of thought on this whole. This is a bigger issue. There's two schools of thought that what the Democrats should do. one of the schools of thought is pick your spots, choose your battles wisely, and fight where you know that you'll have the most support from the country. And then the other school of thought is throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Fight
Mm-hmm.
everything you can, and then some issues are going to have to be taken back, or not taken back, are going to have to be compromised on by
Mm-hmm.
Republicans. Now, I am more on the side of choose your battles, but then I look at the issue and say, look how obstructionist Republicans have been during the whole Obama presidency,
Okay, I agree that
especially
they
in the
were.
last year. And I think, well, it sort of worked for them, did it not? But then I think, well, for the good of democracy, I just want, I think people should compromise, and I want good things to happen. I don't want our Senate to be and our Congress to be a body where nothing happens for the next 4 to 8
And
years.
here's the thing: to be fair, like people like Mitch McConnell Mitch McConnell is one of the most unpopular politicians in this country, and his obstructionism hurt him in that sense. And I do not condone that at all, and I don't think that they didn't give Obama a chance from the second he was president.
So
But my argument here is
you're saying basically
this
Democrats
position
should
is
take.
simply not a political position. The judges are supposed to be outside of the realm of politics and are supposed to focus on the law, and every person that is appointed is very good at doing that when they interpret the law. That's why they're up there. That's why he's sitting there, and we see that. And I think it's more of a political statement against Trump because when
Yes,
it
exactly.
comes down
That's
to it,
what.
he's
Yes,
it's not in reality this guy should be appointed no longer than a week or two of questioning because you can question him as much as you want, but it has nothing to do with how how he is as a judge. If he does anything illegal, I don't think it has to do with that. It just has to do with his interpretation is different than the opposition party. But as you see, someone like Justice Roberts was a blessing in disguise for the Democratic Party because some of his decisions have been, and you see that's real integrity in the fact that he doesn't just stick to his political views and he's able to view the law like Obamacare and say, okay, does this follow the Constitution, whether I agree with it or not. And I think Garland is going to be not Garland. I think that he would have probably been like that too, but I think that Gorsuch will be the same.
I I definitely see where you're coming from, and I'm looking at the totals now. Roberts was approved 78 to 22 in 2005.
Hmm.
Justice Samuel Alito was approved 58 to 42. Sonia Sotomayor approved 68 to 31. Elena Kagan was approved 63 to 37. But I'd also like to say that in none of these cases was there such a polarized political environment, and was the Supreme Court used as such a weapon as it was in the past election. And I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to advocate for the Democrats demonizing Gorsuch for the rest of his time
Hmm.
in on the court, but I'm saying that this is that just for politics, make a statement and then let him on.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from, but it just in my eyes it there's other positions where I would say definitely you should be obstructing because I think there's people in the cabinet that have no qualifications for why they're there. But with this one, I just don't see it. But I'm glad that there's agreement here and there's some disagreement, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the politicization of the party because of the current system. Because people that were approved in the past, like for example, Roberts was passed so quickly and with ease, is because George W. Bush was he controversial? Yes, but Donald Trump is a whole different
Animal, he is.
player, whole different type of guy, and that's why I think this is so much more politicized than it should be.
I mean, look, you're never gonna get a left leaning replacement for Scalia,
Yeah,
and this is not really about Gorsuch himself.
and
This is more about you
and
know.
to the point of that,
Trump.
the left leaning people aren't really losing in this because you're replacing Scalia, who is a hardline originalist. So it's not like you're losing a left leaning justice. It's just basically a replacement of Scalia. Now, of course, they want more, looser interpreters, but it's not essentially that much of a loss because in a lot of cases, it's always 5 to 4 votes in these controversial bills, and the four are usually the stricter conservatives that end up losing.
Well, at least in the past couple of years,
Yeah, and
yes.
now the question is with
Although not
Goldberg,
necessarily.
we'll have to watch out with that. That will be that will be
I mean,
hellfire if she ends up retiring or, God
Gins,
forbid,
I mean,
passes in this administration. That will be an interesting story and a scary one.
all right, yeah, I don't think that she would retire during this administration,
No, I don't think
but
she has a choice.
yeah, I know. I mean, we'll just see what the political battles would be
Yeah.
on that. So I think that concludes this segment. We don't really have much more to say. Thank you for listening.
And we'll continue to see what happens in these hearings. Once again, it was only the first 2 days. And yeah, as Adam said, thank you for listening to Third World Airports. Once again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, and please, most importantly, share your opinions. We want to hear what you have to say. If you have criticisms, if you have encouragement, whatever it is, just go ahead and put it down because we appreciate that a lot. Thank you.